You're acting different. You've probably heard those words before. They're not always said with a smile. Sometimes, they're laced with something sharp. Something you can't quite name but you can definitely feel. It doesn't sound like a compliment. It sounds like an accusation. It lands with a sting. A quiet challenge, as if you're suddenly in the wrong for growing. They say it when you stop entertaining the same circles. When you start walking a little straighter, speaking with more conviction, or distancing yourself from the patterns you've outgrown. And if you're not careful, if you're not grounded, you'll hear those words and begin to shrink. You'll hear them and start questioning the very progress God has called you into. But listen closely. Jealousy doesn't always arrive screaming in the streets. Sometimes, it arrives with a whisper, softly spoken through familiar voices. Sometimes, it comes from the very people you once trusted, the ones you thought would celebrate when you rose. But here's the truth. When God begins to elevate you, not everyone will be willing to rise with you. Some people will quietly hope you shrink so they can feel tall again. Some will want you to dim your light so they can shine comfortably in the shadows. And the easiest way they do that? Through 5 carefully chosen words. You're acting different now. Let me tell you something you need to protect like treasure. You were not born to stay the same. You were not saved to stay stuck. You were not delivered just to go back and dance with the very demons you once begged God to free you from. When God begins to shape your character, when He starts to prune, refine, and mature you, there's going to be a shift. Your language will change. Your posture will change. Your circle will change. The way you spend your time, the things you say yes to, and the people you answer to, those will all change too. And no, that's not you acting different. That's you becoming who you were always meant to be. Jealousy will see your transformation and call it betrayal. It will take your obedience and label it arrogance. It will twist your discipline and call it distance. But what they fail to understand is that this change they're witnessing, it didn't come cheap. This change was born from sleepless nights. It was built on silent prayers, on lonely roads, in valleys so deep that no one but God saw you there. So no, you're not acting different for the sake of appearances. You're acting different because you've simply been through too much to stay the same. Don't apologize for your healing. Don't apologize for protecting your peace. Don't apologize for chasing your purpose. Because here's the real issue. Some people were never uncomfortable with who you are. They were only comfortable with who you used to be. They loved the version of you that tolerated disrespect. The version of you that laughed through pain and called it strength. The version of you that didn't know your worth. That's the version they clung to, because it never challenged them to grow. But now you've found your footing. Now you've stopped explaining your boundaries. Now you pause before reacting. Now you pray before responding. And yes, that looks different, and it should. There's always a cost to growth. There's a cost to walking in the calling God has placed on your life. Sometimes, that cost is the comfort of old relationships. Sometimes, it's the approval of people who can't understand your purpose. But don't you dare let their jealousy drag you back into the very place you cried to be free from. They didn't see the nights you broke. They didn't witness the battles you faced in silence. They didn't carry the shame you wrestled with. All they see now is the light you carry. And instead of asking you where you found it, they choose to say, "You've changed." Let them talk. Let them misunderstand you. Let them say whatever they need to say. Because you weren't built to be understood by everyone. You were built to be faithful. And faithfulness will always seem strange to people who live by feelings. When you stop gossiping, they'll say you're too serious. When you stop partying, they'll say you're boring. When you start saying no without guilt, they'll say you're selfish. But that's how jealousy works. It tries to rewrite your story so it can make sense from their limited perspective. Listen to me. Don't shrink for anyone. Not for the friend who says you're moving too fast. Not for the family member who says, "Don't forget where you came from." You remember, but you're not staying there. You honor your past, but you don't owe it your future. And if someone's love for you depends on you staying small, that's not love. That's control. Jealous people don't actually hate your light. They hate that your light reminds them of the dark corners in their life they're too afraid to confront. So yes, you're acting different. And you should. Because the Spirit of God does not live inside you to keep you the same. He will stretch you. He will mold you. He will change your appetite for things you once settled for. And when that happens, expect the jealousy. Expect the whispers. Expect the smirks. But don't you dare stop walking. Don't you dare stop growing. Because who you are becoming is worth far more than who they're trying to keep you as. They'll say, "You're acting different," but that's not an insult. It's confirmation that God is doing something in you that they simply cannot explain. So keep walking. You've heard it before, delivered with a smirk, a raised eyebrow, maybe even a laugh, but underneath those casual words, there's something sharp. It's not a compliment. It's not innocent. It's a wound disguised as a joke. When someone says, "Must be nice," they're not admiring your life. They're resenting it, and most of the time, they don't even realize it. Because jealousy doesn't always wear a hateful face. Sometimes, it hides behind a familiar one. Sometimes, it comes from the people who should be clapping for you. But instead, they're critiquing the very thing they secretly wish they had. Must be nice is what people say when they don't want to admit they had the same opportunities but didn't take the same steps. It's easier to call your success luck than to acknowledge your sacrifice. It's easier to mock your blessing than to confront their own complacency. That phrase, "It's a cover," it's a protective wall for fragile egos. Because the truth confronts, truth convicts, and truth says, "You worked for this. You prayed for this. You endured for this. You kept going when others gave up." But jealousy doesn't want truth. It wants comfort. And comfort is easier when we pretend someone else just had it easy. Nobody sees the cost behind the crown. Nobody sees the burden behind the breakthrough. They see the house but not the homelessness. They see the joy but not the tears. They see the harvest but not the drought. So when they say, "Must be nice," don't let it touch your spirit. Don't let it shrink you. Don't let it make you feel guilty. Because you know the cost. You know the nights you stayed up praying. You know the doors that slammed in your face. You know the silent battles. The seasons without applause. It's easy to throw shade on someone standing in the sun. But you weren't always in the sun. You walked through storms. You planted seeds when nothing was growing. You stayed faithful when it would have been easier to quit. That's not luck. That's obedience. That's endurance under pressure. But jealous people, they don't want to see that. They want to rewrite your story. They want to strip your testimony of its struggle. And so they say, "Must be nice," as if the goodness of God in your life is something to scoff at. But people who are content don't talk like that. People who are rooted in their purpose don't feel threatened by yours. That phrase, it's a signal that their heart is unsettled, that they're watching your life but ignoring their own. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to defend your blessings. Because people will judge your harvest, but they didn't see your planting season. And if they had walked with you back then, most would have quit before the first sprout even broke through the soil. So when they say, "Must be nice," you say nothing. Just smile. Just nod. Because your fruit speaks louder than their words. And this isn't just about material things. Sometimes it's your peace that disturbs them. Your joy, your healing, your discipline, your relationship with God. When someone has lived so long in chaos, your calm will confront them. Your clarity will disturb their confusion. They'll act like you woke up one day and everything was handed to you. But they didn't see the years of inner work. They didn't see the therapy, the fasting, the broken friendships, the lonely nights. They don't know that before God promoted you, He humbled you. Before He increased you, He stripped you. Before He gave you peace, He let the storm rage so loud you thought you'd never rest again. But now you're walking in what you once prayed for. And they're uncomfortable. So they say, "Must be nice." Yes, it is nice to finally walk in peace after years of walking in pain. It's nice to wake up and take a deep breath without feeling the weight of fear pressing on your chest. It's nice to see the fruit of your faith growing. After planting seeds in seasons where nothing seemed to break through, it's nice to live with purpose. To move through life with a sense of direction that once felt like a distant dream. But let's not forget, this nice came with a price. And you paid it. You paid it when no one was watching. You paid it in the lonely hours. In the silent battles. In the days when quitting felt easier than continuing. So don't you dare let anyone minimize what God has done in your life. Don't let sarcastic words chip away at your gratitude. Don't let their sideways glances or bitter comments make you question the divine favor you're now walking in. They didn't build it, they didn't bless it, they didn't break with you, so they don't get to define it. Hold your head high, keep your spirit clean, let your light shine unapologetically. Because every time someone says, "Must be nice," all they're really doing is confirming that what you're carrying is visible, undeniable, and deeply unsettling to those still trapped in their own excuses. And hear this: you are not responsible for making insecure people feel more comfortable about your blessings. That's not your job. Your job is to stay humble, stay faithful, and keep walking. Because when God brings you through, yes, it is nice, and you should not feel guilty for saying so. That phrase, whether whispered in a quiet room or shouted in a crowded space, carries more than just sound. It carries offense, it carries pain, and it carries the weight of hidden insecurity. It often comes from hearts that feel left behind, not because you judged them, but because your life started convicting them. When people aren't growing, they start resenting those who are. When you begin to rise, when your mindset shifts, when your habits change, when your circle tightens, jealousy doesn't always sit in silence. Sometimes it speaks, sometimes it lashes out, and when it speaks, it often sounds like this: "You think you're better than us." But let's be clear, what they're really saying isn't about you. It's about what your growth reflects in their mirror. When someone feels stuck, your freedom feels like judgment. When someone is trapped in old patterns, your courage looks like arrogance. You never claimed to be better. You never paraded your blessings. You never pointed fingers. You simply started walking in purpose. You simply started obeying God. And your obedience exposed their excuses. They remember you, the old you, the one who was unsure, the one who doubted, the one who settled. And now, they see you making different choices, choosing peace over chaos, discipline over comfort, integrity over popularity, and it unsettles them. Because you used to be safe to them, predictable, relatable, but now you're becoming who God always intended you to be. And that threatens the parts of them that never wanted to leave where they were. Don't let that guilt pull you back. When someone says, "You think you're better than us," they aren't talking about your attitude. They're talking about your elevation. They feel it, they sense the shift, even if they don't admit it. And instead of asking how you got free, they would rather accuse you of pride. Why? Because it's easier to label you than to confront themselves. You didn't change to prove anything to anyone. You changed because you were tired of living beneath your calling. Tired of pretending, tired of fitting into places that drained your soul. So you made a decision. You stepped out of the crowd. You broke the cycle. You chose healing. You started walking in the light. And those who only knew your darkness, they got uncomfortable. It happens every time God elevates someone. Open your Bible and you'll see it. Joseph had dreams. His own brothers turned on him. David was anointed king. His own family doubted him. Jesus walked in truth. The same people who once cheered him cried out, "Crucify him." Days later, people don't change, and neither does the spirit behind that phrase. You think you're better than us. But you're not better. You're just free from the need to be liked, free from the patterns that once controlled you, free from bitterness, free from shame, free from playing small to make others feel comfortable. And freedom, that kind of freedom, isn't arrogance. It's alignment. It's the result of what happens when God truly takes hold of a life. He transforms. He renews. He shatters chains so completely that the people who once held those chains feel powerless and sometimes angry. Don't apologize for what God is doing in you. Don't water down your testimony to make other people comfortable. You can be humble and still walk boldly. You can be kind and still walk honestly. You can love people and still protect your peace. So when they come with their accusations, when they throw their words like darts, "You think you're better than us," you don't need to get angry. You don't need to defend yourself. You already know the truth. And the truth is this: you were like them. You were once broken. You were once addicted to approval. You were drowning in silence, pretending to be fine. But God found you. God healed you. God walked with you through fires they never saw. And now that they see the light on your life, they mistake it for pride, because they never saw the dark room where God developed you. So walk in peace. You don't have to carry their offense. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. Just keep walking, keep becoming, keep trusting that God knows exactly what He's doing in your life. When those voices come, voices that sound like guilt, like shame, like accusation, remember, it's not really about you. It's about the spirit in them that refuses to grow. But you've already changed, and you're not going back. Now there's another phrase, a dangerous one, that pretends to be innocent, almost like it's just a passing observation. But underneath, it carries something toxic, a heart that refuses to celebrate, a spirit infected with resentment. It sounds like this: some people get everything handed to them. But what's really happening here? That phrase tries to rewrite your story. It attempts to erase the years of discipline, the midnight prayers, the silent sacrifices. It wants to dismiss the pain, the effort, and the tears by pretending you just stumbled into your blessing. Jealousy is crafty like that. It twists the truth until it's no longer recognizable. When someone says, some people get everything handed to them, they're trying to erase the price you paid. People see the chapter you're living in now, but they assume they know the whole book. They see your blessing but not your brokenness. They see your joy but not your journey. They see your position but not your process. But God knows. God saw you holding on by a thread. God saw you walking by faith when there were no signs, no support, no evidence that it would work. Now that His promises are showing up in your life, people want to rewrite the narrative. They want to believe it just landed in your lap. But it didn't. You survived seasons of drought. You gave when you had barely enough. You loved when your heart was tired. You stayed faithful when no one was watching. You planted seeds in secret, and now they're bearing fruit. But instead of asking how you made it through, they shrug and say, well, not everyone's that lucky. Some people get everything handed to them. In that moment, they're not just minimizing your journey. They're avoiding responsibility for their own. It's easier to believe you had it easier than to admit they could have chosen differently. Jealousy wants comfort, and the quickest comfort is a lie. The lie says you didn't work for it, that God somehow favored you unfairly, that life just gave you a shortcut. But you know the truth. You know the nights you cried yourself to sleep. You know the sacrifices you made to follow God's call. You know none of it was handed to you. It was handed through you, through obedience, through pain, through pressure, through persistence. Not everyone wants to see that, because if they did, they'd have to confront their own complacency. They'd have to admit they've chosen comfort while you chose growth. So instead of asking, what did it cost you? They say, it must have been easy. Don't let their comments become your confusion. Don't ever start doubting what God did. Just because someone else can't handle it, don't shrink your story to make them feel better about where they've chosen to stay. Your blessing isn't less real just because it makes someone else uncomfortable. You don't have to apologize for favor you didn't fabricate. God did it. And if He did it, let it stand. If He brought you here, don't hide the road He used to get you there. There are people watching you now who will never say it, but deep down, they know what you carried didn't come cheap. They know you paid a price they weren't willing to pay. They may never clap. They may never thank you. But don't live for their applause. Live for the one who called you, the one who walked with you when no one else did, the one who gave you strength in struggle and wisdom in waiting. So let them talk, let them say it was handed to you, because they didn't see what was handed from you. The tears, the time, the trust, the tenacity. And when they can't explain the fruit, they will always question the root. But God saw it all and the favor on your life. It's not luck, it's alignment, it's obedience, it's the living proof that when God says He rewards those who diligently seek Him, He means it. So the next time someone says, some people get everything handed to them, don't correct them, just smile, because you know, it wasn't handed to you. It was handed through you. You know the truth. It wasn't handed to you. It was handed to God, and He gave it back to you in His perfect timing. And when people can't explain your blessings, they start questioning your character. That's how jealousy operates. It doesn't seek truth. It seeks justification. It can't bear to believe that you arrived here with clean hands and a faithful heart. So instead of acknowledging the undeniable grace of God on your life, jealousy starts whispering suspicion. It tries to stain what God Himself has made pure. And one of its most common tactics is spreading doubt. They must be doing something shady. When God begins to elevate you, not everyone will celebrate you. Some will start looking for cracks, not because they're there, but because they can't stand the fact that you stood firm. And if they can't find cracks, they'll create them. They'll accuse what they cannot comprehend. They'll assume what they cannot prove. They'll spread what they cannot verify. Why? Because it's easier to tear someone down than to rise to where they are. That's the bitter root, envy. But here's the truth. There's nothing shady about walking in obedience. There's nothing suspicious about favor that follows faith. What they don't know is what you sacrifice behind the scenes. They don't know how long you worked with no applause, no audience, no spotlight. They don't know the pain you pressed through while still showing up every day with a smile. They didn't see the tears. So they assume the triumph must be fake. But don't let that discourage you. The world is quick to slander what it can't explain. And the enemy would love nothing more than to drown your testimony in doubt. But you don't have to defend yourself. Your fruit speaks louder than their accusations. Your consistency is your greatest witness. Your calm, unwavering peace, it's your proof. Proof that your life wasn't built on schemes but on surrender. You didn't take shortcuts. You didn't manipulate. You didn't cheat your way through the wilderness. You trusted God when it didn't make sense. You honored Him when it would have been easier to compromise. And now that He's honoring you, some people can't handle it. They need your integrity to be fake, because if it's real, it convicts them. If it's real, they lose their excuses. So instead of looking in the mirror, they point their finger at you. They must be doing something shady to get all that. Let them talk, let them watch. Because one day, they'll realize that what looked like overnight success was actually years of quiet faithfulness stacked in silence. What looked like sudden favor was actually the slow, steady hand of God shaping every detail behind the scenes. People forget that you reap in public what you sow in private. When you sow righteousness, you don't need to explain your harvest. The same God who saw your secret obedience will vindicate you openly. He will prepare a table for you in the presence of those who doubted you. Not so you can gloat, but so they can witness His glory. And when they see your feast, they'll remember your famine. When they see your strength, they'll remember your struggle. And maybe, just maybe, they'll stop accusing and start seeking the same God who carried you through. But even if they don't, keep walking. Don't get distracted trying to correct every lie. Don't waste your oil trying to convince people who have already made up their minds. Let your life speak. Let your light shine. Let your integrity echo through every accusation. Because in the end, it's not about proving yourself to people. It's about staying faithful to the one who called you. You didn't get here through shadows. You got here through surrender, and surrender always leaves behind a trail of peace, of purpose, of purity. So if they say it's shady, let them say it when your heart is right and your hands are clean. There's nothing left to fear. God's favor will always look suspicious to those who don't know your story, but that's not your burden to carry. Your job is to walk humbly, love deeply, and obey fully. And when God exalts you, no man's opinion can bring you down. So keep pressing, keep building, keep trusting. Let the fruit do the talking, because when God opens the door, you don't need to explain how you walked through it. There's a phrase, one that seems casual, harmless, a quick comment in passing, but underneath it drips with envy, soaked in quiet malice. It sounds like this: let's see how long that lasts. It might sound like curiosity, but it's not. It's not concern. It's silent hope that you'll fail. It's a quiet celebration at the idea of your downfall. That's what jealousy does. It doesn't want to see your consistency. It wants to see you collapse. It hopes you burn out, give up, fade away. Because if you do, it makes them feel better about staying small. When someone says, "Let's see how long that lasts," they're not challenging your dream. They're revealing their disbelief, their fear, their insecurity. Because your perseverance threatens their passivity. But here's the truth. When God starts something in you, He doesn't just start to tease you. He finishes what He begins. So if they're sitting on the sidelines, watching, waiting for you to trip, you don't have to respond. You weren't called to prove them wrong. You were called to prove God faithful. And that's exactly what your life is doing. This isn't a spark. This isn't hype. This isn't a fleeting moment. This is something eternal, something rooted, and roots don't care who doubts them. They just keep growing, silently, steadily, deeply. Jealousy lives in shallow places. It searches for cracks in your consistency. And when it can't find any, it starts forecasting your collapse. It doesn't celebrate progress, it predicts failure. Why? Because people jealous of your journey don't want to admit you have what they were too afraid to chase. They don't want to face that your strength came from struggle. That your stability came from storms. That your peace was forged under pressure. They just want you to fall apart, so they can sigh with relief and say, "I knew it." But they didn't know it. They didn't know the prayers you whispered in the dark. They didn't know the nights you stayed up asking God if you could make it another day. They didn't see the tears, the fasting, the letting go, the starting over, the quiet obedience, the silent battles you never posted about. They didn't see the moments you almost walked away, but stayed. No, they don't know anything, they just assume. But assumptions don't stop anointing, and opinions don't cancel purpose. When someone says, "Let's see how long that lasts," they forget, it's not you holding this together. It's God. And God doesn't run out of strength. God doesn't get tired. God doesn't abandon what He's building. If He began the good work in you, He will finish it. So while they sit back, waiting for you to collapse, keep walking forward, keep showing up, keep praising. Even when it's hard, keep building, even when they doubt. Because every step you take is a testimony not to your power but to God's presence in your life. The people waiting for your downfall don't realize they're witnessing a miracle in motion. They thought it was a phase, but it's your calling. They thought it was luck, but it's the Lord. They thought it would fade, but your fire keeps growing. Not because you're perfect, but because you're planted. Not because you have it all together, but because you've learned how to stay connected to the one who does. There will always be those who measure your journey with a stopwatch, waiting, timing, checking to see if you'll slow down. But God doesn't work on their timeline. His promises aren't seasonal. They're eternal. When He places His hand on your life, no clock, no critic, no cynic can take it off. So let them count down, let them whisper, let them say, "Let's see how long that lasts." Because they're about to witness what they never expected: endurance. Real, Holy Spirit-led endurance. The kind this world can't fake, the kind the enemy can't counterfeit, the kind jealousy can't kill. When God breathes on your purpose, it won't fizzle out, it won't expire, it won't collapse under pressure. You might bend, but you won't break. You might stumble, but you won't stay down. There's more in you than they can see. There's more in you than even you know. And it's not just emotion, it's conviction. It's not just energy, it's oil, and oil that came through crushing, pressing, and waiting. And now that it's flowing, nothing can stop it. So when you hear those words, when they scoff, when they smirk, when they whisper, "Let's see how long that lasts," don't flinch, just smile. Because they're not speaking your ending, they're exposing their own insecurity. And while they're waiting for you to fall, you'll keep rising, not out of pride, but out of promise. Because the same God who started this is the same God who will sustain it, and when He is your foundation, you don't just last, you overcome.